considered that Britain was legally bound to build a national home for one group while simultaneously protecting the existing political rights of another in the exact same territory. This document completely shifts the perspective on how imperial power collapses under the weight of contradictory promises. Welcome to Strategic Labs. Like and subscribe for more strategic insights. Today, we're doing a strategic autopsy of the British Mandate in Palestine. We'll look at how this operation systematically unraveled between 1920 and 1948, uncovering the massive operational failures that military strategists are literally still learning from today. Okay, let's look at the mission briefing for today. We'll cover 1. The impossible dual mandate. 2. Escalating insurgency and unrest. 3. The turning point. 4. Strategic breakdown and withdrawal. And 5. 3 disruptive strategic lessons. Let's dive straight into Section 1. The impossible dual mandate, a strategic paradox. So right after World War I and the total collapse of the Ottoman Empire, the League of Nations set up this mandate system. Think of it as a legal mechanism meant to guide Palestine toward eventual self-determination. Sounds straightforward, right? Well, actually, the reality on the ground forced Britain into a completely unsustainable position. They had to act as both imperial administrators and neutral mediators between deeply entrenched competing nationalist groups. It was a legal framework that demanded the British balance claims that, strategically speaking, were just flat-out irreconcilable. To put this into perspective, we're looking at 2 entirely contradictory diplomatic promises layered over the exact same piece of land. On one side, Britain was legally bound by the 1917 Balfour Declaration, pledging to establish a national home for the Jewish people. But on the flip side, you have the intense expectations of Arab nationalists. These were anchored in wartime promises like the Hussein McMahon Correspondence, demanding absolute independence and resisting any forced demographic shifts. The British were basically trying to walk a political tightrope with zero margin for error, attempting to pacify 2 emerging national movements that both claimed exclusivity over the same territory. Moving on to Section 2. Escalating insurgency and unrest, operational friction. From the moment the mandate kicked off in 1920, things went south pretty fast. Violence escalated in a shockingly linear way. Early riots erupted in Jaffa and Jerusalem. Then, between 1936 and 1939, the Arab Revolt ticked off, a massive, protracted guerrilla campaign against British rule and ongoing immigration. Trying to put out that fire right before World War II, the British issued the 1939 White Paper to severely limit Jewish immigration. But, that move deeply alienated the Jewish population, especially given the horrors of the Holocaust unfolding in Europe. By the time the war ended, the operational environment had completely collapsed, leading to a highly organized Jewish militancy launching relentless paramilitary campaigns against British forces. The operational challenges here were just an absolute nightmare for British forces. They tried using conventional colonial policing tactics, but the reality on the ground completely overwhelmed them. We're talking severe asymmetric warfare, systematic ambushes, and improvised explosive devices blowing up transport infrastructure. The clandestine militant networks were incredibly sophisticated, and the lines between combatants and civilians completely blurred. British security forces were trained for open field skirmishes, not for a punishing counterinsurgency against highly motivated, well-armed ethno-nationalist groups operating right in their own backyards. Section 3. The turning point. Assumptions unravel. The bombing of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem. This wasn't just a building. It was the nerve center, the actual headquarters of the British administration and military command. This high-profile attack in July 1946 is really the operational and psychological climax of the entire mandate. It tragically took 81 lives, tearing apart the south wing of the building. But strategically, it brutally exposed the fact that British security forces couldn't even protect their own highly fortified administrative centers. It showed the whole world that simply having military superiority does not equal lasting governance. 1947. This is the breaking point. Britain was entirely overwhelmed by the spiraling violence, their inability to secure a ceasefire, and massive international pressure from both the US and the newly formed UN. Keeping 100,000 troops stationed in Palestine had become a crushing financial burden, directly threatening Britain's own post-WW2 reconstruction. So in 1947, London officially threw in the towel. They handed the Palestine question over to the United Nations, signaling a total unilateral withdrawal from their mandate. Section 4. Strategic breakdown and withdrawal. Total exit. As this quote really nails down, the costs in lives, resources, political capital, and imperial credibility were no longer justifiable. Britain was completely bankrupted by the global war effort. Add to that severely strained logistics, plummeting troop morale from constant attacks, and the looming shadow of the Cold War, and it forced a harsh cost-benefit analysis. Trying to maintain a massive counterinsurgency with literally no political resolution in sight was just draining resources the empire simply didn't have anymore. Let's break down how this operational collapse actually looked. The British leaned way too hard into draconian emergency regulations, martial law, and mass arrests. And guess what? That only alienated the moderates and basically supercharged recruitment for militant groups. They tried to treat a deep historical political crisis as a simple law and order problem. Brute military force utterly failed as a substitute for political diplomacy. Because of this, their sudden unilateral withdrawal in May 1948 didn't solve a thing. It just handed over the keys to emerging local forces, creating a massive, dangerous power vacuum that immediately sparked a full-scale regional war. And finally, Section 5. 3 disruptive strategic lessons. Pay close attention here, because these are our top 3 disruptive takeaways, decades of failure boiled down into sharp modern military lessons. First, the dual mandate paradox. Forcing contradictory political objectives onto a single theater of operations guarantees strategic paralysis. You cannot promise the same land to 2 competing nationalist movements and expect military force to magically fix the politics. Second, the failure of colonial policing. Trying to solve deep political crises with conventional martial law and coercion, completely useless. It just entrenches animosity and destroys your legitimacy. And third, the vacuum of withdrawal. Bailing on a contested theater without a credible political settlement doesn't end the conflict. It literally guarantees an immediate escalation into a much wider, more devastating war. So that leaves us with this provocative thought. Does a military withdrawal without a political settlement always guarantee a broader regional war? This is just a preview. For the full deep dive, check out our long-form podcast on the channel. See you in the next one.